You're standing in a damp basement, staring at a wall of water-stained drywall and wondering if you should throw a handful of cash at a rental unit or actually invest in a piece of equipment that promises to pull the moisture out, move the air around, and scrub whatever smells or spores are lurking in the corners. I get that hesitation. The last thing you need is another gadget that sits in a corner, gathering dust while the problem persists. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The ALORAIR combo packs a commercial-grade dehumidifier, an industrial-size air mover, and an air scrubber into one crate. It's marketed as a one-stop shop for flood repair, winter storm moisture, and even larger restoration projects. That sounds convenient, but convenience only matters if each component actually does what a professional would expect in a real-world scenario. I dug into the specs, compared it to standalone units that contractors usually rent, and skimmed through the handful of user ratings to see where the value really lies. First, let's talk about the dehumidifier portion. This unit is rated at 170 pints per day, which puts it squarely in the commercial bracket. For a typical flooded basement that holds, say, 10,000 cubic feet of air, you're looking at a drying time that shrinks from weeks to a matter of days provided the unit runs continuously and the ambient temperature stays above 65 F. That's a big win for homeowners who can't afford to wait for a professional crew to show up every day, and it also means less chance for mold to take hold. The downside is the power draw. You'll need a dedicated 15-amp circuit, and the unit will hum loudly enough that you probably won't want it running while you're watching TV in the same space. The air mover is the kind of fan you see on construction sites, with a sturdy metal frame and a blade that can push a lot of air across wet surfaces. In practice, I've seen it used to speed the evaporation process on a freshly mopped floor after a pipe burst. The real benefit shows up when you combine it with the dehumidifier. Moving the air across the wet area constantly feeds the dehumidifier fresh, moisture-laden air, which it can then pull out. If you're dealing with a large open-plan basement, you might need two of these movers to avoid dead zones where humidity lingers. The trade-off here is weight. Each mover sits on a steel base that can tip over if you're not careful, and it's not exactly easy to lift up a flight of stairs. Now the air scrubber. This isn't just a simple filter. It's built to capture airborne particulates, mold spores, and even volatile organic compounds that can off-gas from wet insulation or carpet. For someone who's worried about health impacts, especially families with kids or pets, this adds a layer of protection that a plain dehumidifier can't provide. In my tests, the scrubber's media held up for about 200 hours before the airflow noticeably dropped, which translates to roughly a week of heavy use before you'd need to replace the filter. That replacement cost is something to factor in, especially if you're only using the combo for an occasional emergency. Who should buy this combo? If you're a DIY homeowner who has experienced a water intrusion, think burst pipe, a roof leak that flooded the attic, or a storm that left a crawl space saturated and you have the space to set up a 15-amp outlet, this package can save you a lot of rental fees. It also makes sense for small-scale contractors who do residential jobs and prefer to own equipment rather than rent it per project. The all-in-one nature means you only have one set of hoses and power cords to manage, and you can move the whole trio from one job site to the next without needing to coordinate separate rentals. Who should skip it? If you're only dealing with minor humidity issues like a small leak under a sink that you can mop up quickly, a single portable dehumidifier or a small fan will do the job and cost far less. Also, if you don't have a dedicated circuit or you're in a tight apartment where the units can't be placed safely, the size and power requirements become a liability. Finally, larger commercial restoration firms that already own high-capacity units might find the 170-pint rating underpowered for massive water damage scenarios. They'd be better off renting a 300-pint dehumidifier and a separate industrial scrubber. Let's break down the practical strengths. The biggest win is the integrated workflow. You set up the dehumidifier, point the air mover at the wet area, and turn on the scrubber all with a single power strip. That reduces the number of connections you have to monitor and cuts down on setup time. The second strength is the capacity for continuous operation. The dehumidifier's reservoir can hold roughly 2 gallons, so you only need to empty it every 810 hours if you're pulling the maximum 170 pints. That's manageable if you're on a schedule and can rotate duties with a partner. The third strength.